This is a show that talks about the story between someone thinking they can to actually going ahead and doing it, because we all know the story between can and did is unique for everyone. We've been interviewing a lot of entrepreneurs. We've been talking to them about their stories. We've heard some very inspiring set of stories over the last couple of weeks. Who I have today actually makes me a little nervous because I've never had people from this profession on my show before. But more importantly, it's easy today for somebody who doesn't understand cooking or the restaurant business to run one of the largest delivery apps in the world. Startups and the culture right now and the environment right now makes it happen. However, there's one profession where you absolutely got to know what you're doing. And surprisingly, this particular business doesn't just require knowledge of logistics, but it also requires knowledge at a much more higher technical capability. Who we have today is Dr. Rahul and Dr. Shalini from the ICAT Air Ambulance team. Yes, you heard me right. There is an air ambulance company in India. And my attempt today in the show is to talk to them and figure out why a doctor or rather a couple of doctors would want to decide to come to India of all the places from UK. And I mean that with absolute respect. And start something called an air ambulance, which is challenging even by the name and sound of it. So we have Rahul and Shalini. Thank you so much, doctors, for giving us time. It's a pleasure for me and an honor to be talking to you today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So my question first is for the both of you, and you can choose to answer. Why India and why air ambulance in India? Is there a need really?
Shalini, do you want to go or should I?
I think let me give a little bit of to begin with, start it off. So why India? Why India is our motherland. A family lives here. No matter which part of the world you live in, no matter how beautiful and luxurious and consistent it is, end of the day, what matters is where your heart lives, and your heart is always in your motherland, close to your parents, close to your brothers and sisters and family. Okay. So we can leave India behind, but India will never leave us, no matter where we go. And coming back home and doing something for your own country makes it all even better. I mean, especially in terms of service, and especially in terms of saving lives. If you look at UK, in India, I would say sky is the limit in terms of whatever you can achieve. Absolutely. In the UK or Western countries, we have a very set career graph. You reach it and you set it, and that's it. But when you have things which you want to make your space in the sky, which is limitless, and that's what drew us to come back to do something in terms of achieving our dreams, doing something really big for the people, and also much more meaningful is that you're saving lives.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Shalini. Rahul, what was your motivation behind this?
I mean, the motivation what Shalini very beautifully said was, the family lives here, so the heart is here in India. Technically, yes, India needs a service like this because we are a very big country in terms of population. A lot of people live here. A lot of people die here of preventable causes, that is road traffic accidents. A lot of people die on the roads. One death every 3 minutes on the roads, and a lot of them are preventable. And with a service like this, what we were rendering in UK, if we were to render it here in India, we are confident and we can prove that we can save a lot of lives. Incorporating the helicopter emergency medical service and air ambulance service to a very high professional standards. And that was the main, one of the biggest driving forces. So that, we should do something back for our motherland.
Right. So as inspiring as that sounds, right? And with the risk of sounding cynical or even offensive, I'm going to ask you a question now. You could have started a hospital and probably made tons of money. Right? Of course, it's still serving the motherland, and I ask this question out of absolute curiosity and respect. So please don't get me wrong. This is a particular vertical where perhaps there are lesser takers, either due to lack of awareness that there is a service like this available, or an assumption that these are expensive and only for the elite. What made you choose this? And this question is for you, Dr. Shalini. You could have just started a hospital and did service. Why this particular vertical within the medical field?
Right. So, if saving life could be done in many ways, you're right, it could be done in the hospital as well. And the second thing about what you spoke is about money. So, in a hospital, we do both, save life and we also make money. Having said that, we were doing that anyway in the UK. So, we had seen money, we had saved lives, especially in National Health Service where budget is not a limit when saving patients. It's only the best interest of the patient, and only the evidence-based practices they followed. The poorest man to the prime minister of the country gets the same treatment. So for us, like, money didn't make any difference. At the same time, saving lives anyway we are doing. No matter where we go, we would do it. Coming to India, making a difference is because, as Rahul said, we have the highest number of road traffic accident deaths. And also reaching the remote places for delivering treatment is a big challenge. No matter what kind of infrastructure you build, like I get tomorrow 1,000 crore, and then somebody says, like, go build a hospital in the remotest part of India and make sure you serve people there. I go build a hospital, but I'll never be able to get the skill set I want there, because every single doctor puts in nearly 25 years of his life in training and getting to where he is establishing his practice.
Absolutely.
And by the time he establishes his practice, his kids would have been in school going age. And that time, his family makes a decision to stay in a good city. And I'm not saying selfish. I think that is because they start thinking about the future of the children. Absolutely. And good education is always available in a good city, like in a tier 1 city, like bigger cities. So when that is the reality, and nobody would like to compromise on the education of children to move into a smaller, because for anyone, for that matter, I think I would say somebody must be, even the God wouldn't say I don't have best interest of my child. So this is very difficult to man the hospitals, even to get a good CT technician, forget about a neurosurgeon in a remote place. So the only way we can deliver the best of the healthcare is taking the hospital, as I said, taking this to the patient. And again, if you look at this golden hour concept in terms of accidents, we have the youth of India are the ones who are dying. So GDP loss to the country is 5 times more than the infrastructure cost. And this 20 to 40-year-old who are, it's like in India, we still, parents depend on us, the children depend on us, the siblings depend on us. So we are taking away the mouth, which is feeding so many, generation ahead, generation behind. And then that is wiping out the future if that man dies of his children. So when it is that's what is required in terms of trauma, or in a road traffic accident, or it could be a medical emergency. You can't wait these people to reach hospital. You have to take, because India is a vast country with a varied geography. You can't expect somebody from Uttarakhand to overnight reach Chennai for the heart transplant. You need to take the hospital to the door and make sure that life is saved. This is the only way you can do it, not by, in the building a hospital is just a building, but not the skill set is not there, and technique of saving life is not there. So a lot of hospitals have failed building remote hospitals, not able to get a decent skill set there.
Right.
So this is the whole reason why working in hospital, anyway, everybody works in hospital. So if we have to do something different to make a difference, is getting the hospital to the next to the door, or to the patient.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Shalini. Indeed is. Thank you for the honesty there in terms of how you responded to that. They actually say, one of the most noble professions is the medical industry. But I think what you both are doing through your team is making this even more nobler, that the other doctors you're actually empowering other doctors to do a lot more than what they currently do. So thank you from all of us to you. Rahul, one question to you, right? So yes, air ambulance as a concept, it's obvious, but it can be the same as the land ambulance, right? I mean, if there is a word like that. The ambulance that we see regularly on the roads. What goes on into, how different is the air ambulance? I mean, why this? Of course, the time is there. You're saving a lot of time. But what goes into air ambulance? I mean, for our viewers generally who don't understand this.
Yeah, so that is a misconception. Comparing a land ambulance to an air ambulance would be a wrong thing to do, because both of them serve different purposes. Obviously, in an air ambulance, what really happens is, we are, as Shalini was saying, we are transporting a particular kind of skill set to where the emergency is. Doctors are very comfortable, whether it's a cardiologist or a neurologist, very famous ones and highly skilled ones. They are comfortable working in an environment inside the hospital with a support staff and a support structure and machines and all that. It takes a very particular, peculiar type of skill set to do it outside your comfort zone, in a very hostile environment, a lot of people, very anxious people around. So that is where we excel. That is where we specialize, and we want to make more of us. So we started a training program to create more pre-hospital doctors. Now, coming to your specific, the question in particular, that a land ambulance versus an air ambulance. So in an air ambulance, we send out these medical commandos who can land at a place close to a medical emergency, and they are capable to do a lot of procedures and a lot of maneuvers to save a person's life.
Does this have to be near an airport always, or
not necessarily? Not necessarily. That is the main reason why we use helicopters, so that we don't restrict ourselves to airports. A helicopter can land basically anywhere. That is the biggest advantage of a helicopter. And we as doctors, or pre-hospital emergency physicians, or pre-hospital critical care physicians, are trained to perform a lot of life-saving maneuvers and procedures,
right,
even up to delivering a baby, plus opening the chest and repairing the heart in an emergency, thoracotomy. That's what we call it. So that is the kind of skill set that we want to bring to the pre-hospital emergency medical practice, and a land ambulance will never be able to deliver that, because the land ambulance will not carry those skill set. A land ambulance is designed to go and scoop and run. A lot of deaths happen en route, either right, the land ambulance reaching the emergency, or the emergency reaching an appropriate hospital, not the catchment area hospital, but an appropriate hospital. Right. So that is where the air ambulance cuts across that that time lag, where we are delivering specialists to the site. They stabilize the patient, and then they take the patient to an appropriate hospital, where the escalation of care happens, and the lives are saved. So that is
just to refine that.
Yes, Dr.
Yeah. So, like, for example, if an accident happens, at least 40% of the deaths at this point of time in India are preventable. The reason that people died was not because of the primary injury, because of the complication from the primary injury. Right. For example, if I go hit a wall and I start bleeding in my brain, I wouldn't die of the bleeding. But if we don't contain the bleeding and the brain keeps swelling and swelling, you die. I die of that. I didn't die of hitting my head to the wall. So in that point, if we send a land ambulance, can go, reach, take the patient. By the time it comes to the hospital, the patient will definitely be dead. But the same thing, skill is gone, and stabilize the patient. The primary insult is contained by the highly skilled people. Then you have enough time to reach whichever the appropriate hospital, as Rahul mentioned, and then you save that life. This is the difference between land and air. It's not just the time, is not the essence. It's also the right skill set going on that. So I always say, on a 20 crore chopper, 20% skill should not go. It should be appropriate skill, as appropriately matching the skill set is the money for what you invest onto the equipment.
Right. So it's we are in 2020, and yet we often hear its main news. I'm not talking about page 3, right? It's main news on newspapers and headlines on TV that the traffic cops and people have supported an organ to be transported from Bangalore to Chennai in 4 hours, and that becomes headlines in India, right? And the unfortunate part, or rather the fortunate part, is in the Western countries, it's kind of an obvious that there is somebody who will come and airlift the body if it's an emergency, right? And yet here in 2020, we sometimes hear news where everybody is celebrating the fact that successfully we have transferred. So from that perspective, I think what you're bringing into this market is huge. But I still have one question for both of you. as a middle class guy, how expensive is this going to be? And can my policy cover these expenses if I have an insurance policy already?
Right. We can split that question into two. Can a middle class afford this? The whole intention of coming back to this country or to my country, to our country, is not to make a middle class person afford this, to make every single person to be able to access this service without blinking twice. If we are covering one highway with a helicopter, every single person should get a blanket cover on that. We don't want to go and ask, do you have insurance or not, when somebody is needing to be saved life. Life is priceless. We can't put a price to this. And with the amount of, with the way these things has been worked out, I don't think so it will be burden on anybody for that matter. It could be done extremely in a very without having huge cost implication to anybody, for any stakeholder. This could be done very well. So all this blueprint has been put forward to the government, and hopefully we'll be able to start it off very soon.
That's so nice to hear. Yes, Dr. Rahul.
Yeah, the whole idea of coming back was to deliver this free. The medical emergencies should be dealt free to the people. And there are obviously planned interfacility patient transfers, and we believe there are insurance packages covering that, but those are planned procedures, planned transfers. But in an emergency, no one should pay. This service should be free. And as Shalini was saying, we have already created a blueprint, and we are speaking to the relevant people to make this a reality.
Absolutely. And I hear some fantastic job being done by some governments. Like, I'm from Hyderabad. I know the Telangana government already does a lot of things for free for a lot of people in terms of the medical services. So hopefully sometime soon, this also becomes a national policy. I often tell people, when people ask me, why did I quit a well-paid job to start up and become an entrepreneur? My eventual dream, because I'm an animal lover, my eventual dream is to start animal ambulance services across India, like 108. And when people ask, how are you going to do that? I often talk about the example of EMRI, right? When they started, it was a non-profit organization, a private entity, which started that, which eventually became the human ambulance service across India that governments are providing now, right? So I have all the optimism for the both of you that this soon becomes like that for India. And I can use this and get 1 million more views when that happens on YouTube.
Teja, you are giving us ideas. Shalini, that's not a bad idea.
I mean, Switzerland Rega is airlifting cows from the mountains. So, of course, given a choice and a chance, we would never even miss that opportunity if we get to save even animal lives. Like, every life is, as I said, is precious and priceless.
Yeah.
And when you said one thing about the 2020, if you look at Germany, they have 1 helicopter per million. In India, which is doing the helicopter emergency medical service, India has the most enviable IT sector, especially coming from Bangalore, Hyderabad. We know how tech savvy we are. We have an app for everything, which even UK doesn't have. Like, we have an app for getting a haircut at home. But having said that, when it comes to saving lives in an emergency, especially road traffic accidents or any kind of emergency, we are nearly 50 years behind. So this service is not, it is inevitable, not even essential. This should have been in India in place long time ago.
I talk about this with respect to automobiles often, right? Something like an airbag, right? Or a seat belt is like a mandatory thing outside. Here it's a matter of luxury, right? The more money you spend, the more safer your car is. I mean, if you look at Europe, they won't allow a car to be sent out on the roads without a seat, an airbag, right?
Yeah.
So I completely echo with you. So where do you go from here? COVID, post-COVID, has it made a difference to how people look at your services?
COVID, of course, has made a huge difference to the services. There are two aspects to COVID transfers. One is aviation sector, one is medical sector. It was a nightmare in terms of, after the aviation lockdown, we were not able to bring any patients transfer because nobody knew how to do this. Especially we were stuck with the patient where 6 air ambulance companies of India had tried to airlift this young engineer from Afghanistan to Hyderabad to fix his hip. He had a polytrauma. He had fallen off, and he was just put in the Afghan air base, which was soon to be evacuated as well. And nobody was able to bring him home because entire lockdown of the aviation. So we took it up as a challenge. We brought in all the ministries on one page. So the ministries that got involved was home, health, disaster, civil aviation, external affairs, all this, plus the foreign affairs in the country of origin as well. So we had to make all these people come onto one single agreement that this guy has to be airlifted back to India. Right. And at this point of time, nobody in the world were doing it. Not just forget about people coming to India. Even like you couldn't go from UK to US and bring a patient. So there was absolutely, even the airports were shut. So there was not even any ground handling or refueling possible to do this as well. So at that point of time, we took it up a challenge and we did India's first aeromedical transfer after the COVID hit. And that became a guideline and a standard operating procedures for all the rest of the transfers to be done for all the ambulance companies across the world. I think that we are extremely proud to say that we were able to achieve that.
It's not a small feat, by the way. What you have achieved is incredible.
It is not. It took us like every day, 6 to 7 hours phone calls to each ministry to make it happen. It took us like a week. If this guy was left alone there, you not only have lost his limb, also even a small clot dislodging from his pelvis because he was immobile, could have gone into his lungs and it could have killed him. So it was like a sitting time bomb. And we knew he was 37-year-old. We can't just let him go. Because for us, the easiest thing is end of it is just a transfer. What's the big deal? Why do you have to
transaction? Yeah.
Exactly. Like, if you say we do one transfer, we do 10 transfers. Like for us, is one of the transfer. You could have said that. Why should I waste 68 hours on one transfer? But this was not only setting a precedence, it was also a challenge for us. And we have done many challenging things like this after we came back, because in everything we take up, because with a million variables involved in aeromedical field, every transfer is challenging. And that transfer is the one which keeps us motivating to get better and better and better than with ourselves. We just compete with ourselves.
Right.
So that is a COVID difference that happened. We not only did that first aeromedical, went ahead and did India's longest aeromedical transfer ever in the history. Wow. We had to hop into 4 airports and spend a night with a patient in a different country, because normally what happens when we have long transits, the second set of pilots and second set of medical crew fly one night before and stay there and take over. Here we were not able to do that because there was no commercial operations at all. So the same crew has to continue throughout. So and without the mandatory rest for both the medical crew and the aviation crew, especially the pilots, they're not allowed to fly further. They need to have rest 14 hours. So that was only possible by resting along with the patient. The crew had to be rested overnight. So we did this from the Johannesburg with a lot of coordination with 5 different airports for the refueling and things like that, flying over nearly 7 countries. We did this, and without getting quarantined, going into every country and night halting, you can't even imagine that could be like something that could be possible. Like, when we think back, we said, did we really do that? So again, that was another thing with the COVID challenge. But I think COVID complications, we are airlifting very young doctors, especially, who have developed these fibrotic lungs and requiring bypass on the lung machines, and then airlifting them. And it is not only just heartbreaking, it also just makes you feel so vulnerable and just shows your life maybe tomorrow.
So, Rahul, I wanted to know your perspective. Do you think COVID, and there is a raised awareness in people now with respect to hygiene, with respect to health, a lot more than what existed pre-COVID, because Indians usually have this chalta hai attitude. We are a strongly religious country, which means we have a faith system, a belief system in place where everything happens only to somebody else. We call that the optimism bias, right? So now I think that's changing slightly. Of course, on the roads in Hyderabad, at least I don't see it yet. There are still people going trippies on the bike without masks. But I think overall, generally, the population has become more aware of health and health-related. Do you think people's acceptance of another option they have for their loved ones in terms of an air ambulance would increase from now on, if it hasn't already?
Yes, of course, and I think we have already done it, and which has come out in the media as well, where we have taken the risk and transferred active COVID patients for the first time as well in India. So these patients, were actively COVID, they were floridly COVID, and they were, positive. All the tests were positive. We have imported these special isolation pods, tackled COVID, or the way we have fought in the war against COVID was to to stand shoulder to shoulder with our other doctor brethren, if you can call it, by taking the challenge of transferring these COVID patients in an aircraft. Now, if you imagine a COVID positive patient in an emergency room or in an ICU, it's a big place. In an aircraft, it's a confined space, so you are more exposed to the viral load. Right. So we geared ourselves for that. We did our homework, geared ourselves for that. We got these special isolation pods from Germany to contain the virus within the pod by introducing this patient in the pod, and in a very stable condition, although they were very highly critical. So it took a lot to pre-optimize and prepare the patient to be introduced in the pod, because once the pod is sealed, it cannot be opened. Otherwise, we risk ourselves to be exposed. And we did that for the first time in India. We transferred a floridly COVID positive patient from Calcutta to Chennai successfully. And after that,
it was more to the pilots and the airport staff as well, Rahul, that explained that.
Yes. We exposing the pilots, the flying crew as well as the medical crew. It was our responsibility. It not only our moral responsibility, but our actual, our as leaders of this company and the organization, it was our responsibility to make sure that everyone was safe. And we did that very effectively. Secondly, now we are seeing a lot of young people, as Shalini was mentioning, our doctor friends and colleagues being exposed to COVID and suffering from it. They go into this lung fibrosis, the lung injury which happens because of COVID. And even after the COVID has left their body, the lung fibrosis continues, and that causes a lot of mortality. And we are seeing a lot of people die at a very young age because of that. And then the only way to tackle that is giving the lungs some rest to recuperate. And the way you do that is by introducing a bypass called ECMO, where you're taking the blood out and purifying it and pumping it back. So it's called a bypass machine, or in our language we call it ECMO, and giving enough time for lungs to recuperate. So it's a bridging to recovery, and we have specialized in that in the way that no one has, probably, because we have developed this concept of a rapid ECMO service, where we fly out a crack flying ECMO team, which is a 4-member ECMO team, highly specialized doctors and perfusionists and paramedics. 2 doctors, they can immediately put lines in and put the patient on an ECMO. And in the last 14 days, we have done 10 ECMO transfers. We are almost flying 1 ECMO per day over the last 2 weeks. And all these, and more than 50% of these were doctors who were facing the corona on the front line, and basically suffering from that. And more than 50% of these cases were in an emergency. ECMOs are not done in emergency. They should not be done in emergency. But we had no other choice but to do that. And we are writing a case series on the type of challenges we faced, including crossing the border of Nepal by road and taking a chartered chopper from the other side of the border to rush to get a ECMO done on an Indian national in Kathmandu. So we are very, very proud of taking the challenge, taking the bull by its horns, and facing the corona challenge, and getting involved in the war against corona in our own unique way.
Right. Right.
We have put
It
ourselves
took a
on the
lot for us to convince the airport staff and the pilots to do these transfers. As Rahul said, like it's very challenging environment inside an aircraft, and the pilots can't wear PPE fly the aircraft. So they will be in their own dress because they have the issues with the communication, the ATC and things like that.
Right.
So getting them to convince this isolation prod is 100% protective, which they'd never seen in their life. And for according to them, I'm not a doctor. Why should I put my life at risk? But having said that, the doctors were all wearing PPE, so they were not at such high risk. And the ground handling staff, like a number of airport staff as well, who come to clear and things like that. So
Right.
it was extremely. It was not challenging. It was like mammoth task to get them to agree and convince to do this. But then once we did that, then there was no stopping.
Right.
And I can say that with confidence, especially about Shalini and I, we have slept less than 4 hours in the last 6 months since the
Right.
corona started. It's non-stop, and we don't get tired because we find it challenging and exciting as well to get involved in such challenges where no one have ventured before. So we are
I think before you realize you need to sleep, there'll be something else. So I don't know whether we enjoyed, but there is no time to even think that we enjoyed.
See, often what it takes one to become a doctor, right? It's not easy. It's one of the toughest fields of education. It starts from there. To how much effort you guys put in is underrated, often insanely criticized. But what you guys do is definitely, you're the unsung heroes for the nation. Moreover, the both of you are becoming the unsung heroes of the unsung heroes as well, in a country which probably lacks infrastructure quite a lot. And talking about infrastructure, do you see yourself partnering with teams like NDRF, right, the National Disaster Recovery Force? Because often, like the recent Hyderabad floods as well, there were a lot of cases of pregnant women. There are a lot of cases of elderly people struggling with floods. And these are not national level disasters, but for Hyderabad, it still was a difficult time the last couple of weeks. Do you see yourself playing more of an active role with the governments in the future?
We already done that. I think
it?
like we keep on saying the very first. I get bored and sick and tired of that word because we keep saying this very first. So when the Kerala floods happened in 2018,
right,
the first time in Indian history, civilian chopper was pressed into action to airlift these patients or the people from the relief camps. So there are two types of evacuation that happens whenever there's a disaster. One is a case evacuation, that is a casualty evacuation. Other one is a medical evacuation, medevac. Casualty evacuation was done by the fishermen. I always take their name first because they played a very big role, and the Indian Army, Air Force, and people like that. And the medical evacuation was very challenging because the roads were clogged and there was no way these relief camps had access to the healthcare system. They're all manned by a doctor, but the doctors had limited capacity in terms of dealing with patients, as they were not all clinical doctors, some of them. Along with that, they didn't have infrastructure. They didn't have hospitals to look after. There were nearly 10 lakh people in these relief camps. And the only way these emergencies in these relief camps could be brought to the tertiary care center, which was only Trivandrum, which was operational, was by a chopper.
Right.
So we proved the concept of helicopter emergency medical services the first time in India. We also proved that how a chopper or a flying ICU can be used effectively during this flood reliefs, and how government, without spending a pie, where because this was done with our personal money and also some foundation money we got from a Sathya Sai Foundation. So we proved that if there's a will, there's a way, and we can do this, and we can still do and join hands with the Indian government, Army, Air Force, in NDRF to execute this very successfully.
In fact, thank you
Rahul,
for
you'd like to add
taking that name before I come to Rahul. Thank you for taking some names there, Dr. Shalini, because that was my follow-up question. Because I've been visiting Puttaparthi since childhood, and I know the hospital there provides everything for free without perhaps any support from the government, right?
Yes.
And seamlessly through the last at least quarter of a decade, if not more. sorry, quarter of a century, if not more. Do you see that happening more and more in terms of partnerships with organizations that already have funds collected for this purpose? So Rahul, maybe this you can
Rahul. Yeah.
Yes, I mean we do see a lot of opportunities for organizations like these, as well as religious institutions, as well as government organizations, because what we proved in Kerala was that we can deliver this free to the people, to the people who actually need it, and it was effective in saving lives. Sai Gramam Foundation really helped us in that. Plus, we poured in all our savings into these operations, but we did not charge any money. Now, in terms of operating a helicopter-based service, the type of money that is required is negligible compared to the funds that these organizations see in their bank balances, as well as these religious institutions see, as well as the government have funding for. And that is where we come from, that these are not astronomically high price tagged services, that we can render this service for a fraction of the money that they would normally spend on getting medical mobile medical units or ambulances, or and stuff like that. So yes, we do see a lot of synergy. We really are seeking out to religious and other organizations like this. In fact, we have our own ICAT Foundation. Wow. And Shalini is a big philanthropist, and she's heading the COVID India campaign, which has facilitated the donation of more than 4 crores worth of PPEs and other COVID-related fighting equipment. Plus, she started a plasma donation campaign called COPE, where she's involved in facilitating a lot of plasma donation and treating a lot of patients through that. So that is what we have come here for. That is what excites us, and and we are obviously seeking out to go into partnership with institutions and religious organizations because we are trying to achieve the common goal.
We are I think more in terms of national disaster relief fund, things like that. Of course, yes. As Rahul said, there's a lot of synergy, and it will become a service which will be interdependent on each other. And more we prove this concept, I think there'll be a lot of value add to what they do in saving lives and also making a difference.
Right. Yeah. Because when we positioned our helicopter in Kerala, we were under the direct command of the Southern Air Command. And we got ourselves tuned to working with the Air Force and the Army and the NDRF. So it was quite exciting.
What we got from the government and all the other military and Air Force was a blanket permission to do what we wanted to do. So right. It just proved that you don't need money to do it. It's just right. A cooperation of all the different stakeholders is all it matters, including right. The collector to the Chief Minister of Kerala gave us a hand in doing this, rendering the service. So right. It was magnanimous. Without financial help, we were able to render this. I think it just having the right people, right-minded, especially a state like Kerala where people are educated, made a huge difference to us.
Right. So I'm curious to ask both of you this, right? So within my networks and my friends' networks on social media and otherwise, we have more than a few million people that we are connected to. And you are here trying to do something which is more of a service than anything else to the nation. If there was anything that all of us could do, right? My viewers, my networks, my friends, what is it that we can do for you?
I think first and foremost, something very passionate to both of us is Organ World. We do airlift India, highest number of organs in India.
Right. And
80% of the people registered to be organ recipient die before they get the organ.
Right.
And if you ask the regional organ transplant organizations or the national organ registries and things like that, they say it's purely because of lack of logistic support.
Right.
Before we came back to India, 90% of the organ which were eligible for transplant used to go waste. because absolutely there was no way people could connect up, because organ airlifting or organ transport requires an in-depth knowledge and commitment, 8 hours of work non-stop, 4, 5, 6 WhatsApp groups running, and timing is such a big thing, because heart has got only 240 minutes to live outside the body before it gets implanted into the recipient.
Right.
So when it comes to this, at least 80% of the people are dying before they get the organ. If you look at it in a very cynical way, every 4 minutes there is a road traffic accident death, and each one of them could have been qualified as an organ donor. And also, again, very proud to say that until today, whatever the organ has come to us, not even one single one we have wasted. We have successfully airlifted every single one of them, despite the challenges we face from the airport authorities, from the donor family, from the recipient hospitals. Million logistic problems come into place,
right.
But we have successfully airlifted all of them.
Right.
So when this is the issue, and I think we have to make every organ recipient be able to afford this airlifting. And the only way of doing it is people like you, the philanthropists, have right attitude towards life, or towards the society, probably can contribute to this organ airlifting world. And because I think government will be able to take care of the road traffic accidents, the organ world is one which lacks support. And
right.
I think expecting everything from the government is a shame. We have to chip in whatever possible in every possible way. That's the reason why COVID India campaign, the third force, I'd call it, came into a big picture and helped hospitals in terms of bridging when the government supplied. And we only supply to government hospitals. So the 4 crore worth looks very small in front of what government did, but still it came into saving a lot of saviors. Like, we call them saviors, SOS campaign. Right. And so I think that is where we require a helping hand in
Yeah, so I will just continue where she left off. So, sure. So we will definitely need help from entrepreneurs, and also through your networks, if they can contribute towards free organ airlift for the people who have these transplants done in government hospitals.
Right.
The private hospitals can pay for themselves, but the government hospital, the transplants happening in government hospitals, the recipients don't have enough money to afford an airlift of an organ, and the heart and lungs do need an aircraft to bring them to the tertiary center.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. It's truly inspiring stuff. Yes, there are a lot of people out there who would love to help you out, because you're doing this for a noble cause. India needs this. And as a nation, when we talk about being Atmanirbhar, this is one of the critical things that we need to be absolutely self-sufficient, which is to take care of our people and see if we can stop people from dying. So thank you for sharing all that you've shared. In fact, my viewers would know this. This is perhaps the longest interview I've ever done. Just so you know, our average timing for our interview is 20 minutes. This has crossed 1 hour. But I'm going to release it as is, without editing, because I think people need to know some incredible work being done by our own countrymen when they had a choice, that they didn't do this and made tons of money. And that's what makes this truly an inspiring journey. And their story, rightfully so, has been reported in a book called Dhool, Dhoop and Dhakka. You've heard through the last 1 hour the Dhool, the Dhoop and the Dhakka that Dr. Shalini and Dr. Rahul had to go through. So if I were to ask you one question, Dr. Rahul and Dr. Shalini, one word that explains your journey thus far, just one word, if you were to talk about one word that explains your journey thus far, and one word as a message to our audience if they want to start up something in their life. So I'll go to you, Dr. Shalini, first. One word that explains your experience.
Perseverance.
Perseverance, okay. And Dr. Rahul?
Exciting.
Exciting. And one message. So if somebody were to start something in a similar field or something where nobody has treaded before, what's your one word message for? What should they do? Dr. Rahul, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I would say perseverance. Do not give up.
You've interchanged that now. So Dr. Shalini, what is your one word message?
There is okay, one word.
Oh, you can do a sentence. That's fine.
Okay. I always say there is no alternative to hard work. Hard work with ethics, it'll always take you where you want to.
Absolutely. Amazing that you say that. Hard work without ethics takes you nowhere. When you add a noble cause and care for your other countrymen, it just makes it even bigger in terms of things to achieve. Dr. Shalini, Dr. Rahul, been a pleasure. This Friday night, I am signing off with a feeling of high. Thank you for inspiring me. I've been procrastinating quite a few tasks the last week because I've just been plain lazy. Listening to your story, I think I'm just going to go with such high-spirited intent to finish them as well. Thank you so much for spending this time. A big thank you from all our viewers and all my friends and all my networks for doing a wonderful job and the service to the society. God bless you both with many more. May you save many more lives in India. And may I see you up there making this a legal entity within the government of India very, very soon. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully I'll get to meet you lovely souls soon. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.